The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Welcome to Wednesday afternoon. Happy lunchtime, everybody, on another game day for the Montreal Canadiens, coming in hot after a lopsided 5-2 loss on rivalry night. A game, I got to tell you, man, I love storylines, and thinking about this on Tuesday going into that game last night, very, very excited for what I thought was going to happen, and it didn't. So good afternoon, everybody. Shout out to Little Bear and littlebearonline.com. They've got all the questions for all your pet's needs, as they care about your pet as much as you do. Find them online, littlebearonline.com, with delivery, curbside pickup. But the in-house shopping experience is outstanding on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. Good afternoon, Marco D'Amico.
Good afternoon, everybody. How's it going?
It's good. Canadiens legend is going to be honored at the Bell Center tonight ahead of the 7:30 game against Winnipeg. Very much looking forward to that. I want to talk about Andrei Markov a little bit later in the show. But yeah, we're here to talk about what happened last night at the Bell Center. Marco, you were in the house watching the Canadiens once again get off to a pretty good start. They score the game's first goal, and seconds later, it was the Fabian Zetterlund goal from distance, blocker side on Sam Montembeault, and Ottawa really didn't look back from that point on. I would imagine the energy was high, and then it quickly dissipated throughout the course of the evening. So let's get at the task at hand here. What happened? What happened to the Montreal Canadiens that made them look the way they did in that loss last night?
Man, I wish I could share my screen from times on these things. I don't know. One day I'll figure it out. But if you look at the Canadiens heat map in terms of where the shots came from versus where the Ottawa Senators shots come from, it's almost like they complete each other as a puzzle, because all the Ottawa Senators chances were in the high danger areas and all the Canadiens chances were in the periphery. And I think that best exemplifies what's wrong with the Canadiens defensively and what's going on with the Canadiens offensively. Again, last night, 2 power play goals, no 5-on-5 offense, something I'd like to get into. And then defensively, just it's so easy to access the slot against the Canadiens nowadays because there's just very poor coverage. I mean, you look at the Artem Zub.
Yeah.
Like, we could talk about the goaltender, and we will talk about the goaltending.
Of course.
But I think part of this is also stems from the discipline and the coverage, and whether or not the players are being receptive to Martin St. Louis' instruction here, because it's the same mistake over and over and over again. And I think that's why a lot of people were so turned off by last night, is because on that Jaden Struble coverage of Brady Tkachuk, he's giving Brady Tkachuk everything he's got.
Yeah.
Brady Tkachuk shrugs him off, and Spinorama passes it right into the slot.
It was a great
who's there
move
to pick up the puck is Artem Zub. But if you're Cole Caulfield or if you're Zachary Bolduc on that play, you have to cover the defenseman. So if the defenseman's cutting into the middle, you have to be on top of that, especially Zub. Zub's not the fastest defenseman, so you should be able to get under him in terms of being able to cover him. And he was by himself, like, for a significant amount of time. And I liked that Martin St. Louis was asked this question after the game, and he said, those that aren't going to be able to keep up defensively are going to sit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys noticed, but look at the ice time last night. Ain't nobody complaining about Demidov's ice time today. No one played 17 minutes.
Exactly.
But you see who played less?
Yeah.
Zachary Bolduc got his minutes slashed. The Jake Evans line, usually the second most used line at even strength, slashed.
Yeah.
Joe Veleno was used, and I mean, I think Joe Veleno played a pretty good game, but Joe Veleno was used more and was much more consistent defensively. Jake Evans was removed from the 4-on-4. You know, it was Slafkovsky and Demidov instead of Slafkovsky and Evans, which I enjoy as a duo. So I think we're getting to the point where Martin St. Louis is going to start pulling the sheath out and start getting mean with some of his veterans, because the theme for me last night is the veterans and the goaltending. They're not there. They're not where they need to be right now in terms of how they need to play.
Ottawa in the midst of a 7-game road trip. They had gotten off to a great start, 3-1 through 4 games. They had lost back-to-back. They come to Montreal, and by a mile, they look like the fresher team. They were quicker. They won all the board battles, and I get that they were and are the best face-off team in the league. And when you start with the puck and the Canadiens' defensive zone coverage is as problematic as it is, and I want to get into the systems and everything else, because Cole Caulfield didn't sugarcoat the loss. Nick Suzuki didn't sugarcoat the loss in the aftermath of that game last night. I like Martin St. Louis' press conference. I thought he was very short, to the point, and he's talking about systems, right? And asked several times about systems in both languages. And listen, I'm going to agree with the coach. I've gone to bat for this guy. I'm not going to put this on Martin St. Louis. He can't be out there. He's not forechecking. He's not backchecking. He's not the goalie. He can't score goals for this team. I think he prepares them well. And for me, the point that was driven home was, you want to talk about systems. Who cares what you want to play zone? You want to play man-to-man? If the attention to detail isn't there and these players aren't alert, aren't mentally sharp, physically sharp, what are we talking about here? I mean,
it's such a good point.
Three rookies on the ice yesterday for the Canadiens, and sometimes it goes from 6 rookies to 3 rookies to 4 rookies. There's a lot of veterans there, as you pointed out correctly. So Jake Evans, less than 10 minutes. Josh Anderson, what's going on? Where's the playoff physicality, Josh Anderson? Where is that guy?
Well, so I would like to address this with Josh Anderson, because again, like, I have no with respect to the viewers, right? Like, I have no skin in watching the Canadiens win or lose. My job is to analyze, but even I am getting frustrated to watching the way that Josh Anderson has not necessarily from a playing perspective, but how he has behaved on the ice. I think back to that Edmonton game where he was nagging the referee. Okay, the referee was kind of you could call it what it is, but Josh Anderson didn't have to do that. It almost feels like he's got more like emotional impulsivity in him than a lot of these younger players. I didn't like the way he reacted in Colorado. Didn't like him on the road trip in terms of his emotional, I would say, exuberance. And again, last night, like, what are you doing? Again, getting a needless penalty. And putting the Canadiens in trouble. And ironically enough, you look at the player that has been given the most amount of flack for this kind of behavior in the past, in Arbor Xhekaj.
Yes.
What did Arbor Xhekaj do last night when he was challenged?
Yeah. It's what he's been doing. Yeah.
It's not the time. And yet, I like that Martin St. Louis said, I would usually have to have a conversation with Arbor Xhekaj early in his career about this. He's like, I trust Arbor to not put us in a position like this. And I liked it because I thought Arbor played well in consequence, and the advanced numbers show it as well. But I feel like the emotional impulsivity and the lack of effectiveness of the Canadiens' bottom 6 is significantly hurting them, especially in the midst of all these injuries against teams that are stronger, that have more depth in their top 9. You look at the Colorado Avalanche. You look at a team like the Ottawa Senators. Those are teams that give a team like Montreal significant problems. It's up to veterans like those two, like a Jake Evans, to stand up. And I find that those are the ones regressing the most at the moment.
As of now, it looks like Jared Davidson's probably going to slot back into the lineup.
He is going to
yeah.
slot back in.
Yeah, so Florian Jacki will be the odd man out as they try to, I don't know, find something in the bottom six, because Nick Suzuki looks fresh again. He looks like maybe he's put that injury behind him, as Juraj Slafkovsky, Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki continue to do most of the heavy lifting. And when those guys aren't on the ice, the Canadiens have been searching. And look, they've given up 12 goals in their last two games, the 7-2 loss, the 5-2 loss to Ottawa, into Winnipeg tonight. For a Jets team that's also been struggling, we'll get into the preview of tonight's 7:30 contest. And then ultimately, we could talk about coaching, we could talk about systems, but I'll reiterate the same point, that if attention to detail and the focus isn't there, the alertness isn't there, and then you combine that with a goaltender that can't make a timely stop, that can't bail your mistake out of trouble, you're in a world of hurt. I mean, Sam Montembeault's played 14 games, man. Not like Jakub Dobeš hasn't done any better, really. No one's really established themselves. Welcome to December with 4 sets of back-to-backs, 2 this week. One's going to wrap up today, then it's back to Saturday and Sunday. I don't know. I don't know where the answer comes from to get this team back to the team that was 5-1 in their first 6 home games to start the season, or 5-2, whatever the number was. And now they've just been incapable of finding any sort of momentum, which takes me to Zachary Bolduc. I mean, there were a couple of moments there yesterday. I mean, this guy's got 1 point. He's got 1 assist in like 13 home games this season. A completely different player at the Bell Center. I wonder what's going on there for this young man. But like, Marco, did they not partly bring him in for that little bit of ruggedness, the guy that could be aggressive on the forecheck? There were at least 2 instances where he had a chance to take his man out along the boards and just did the old Top Gun flyby. I wonder, where his confidence, man, it doesn't look like it's in his game lately. It just adds to the problem.
Which is ironic, because I thought he had a pretty strong road trip.
Yes,
but
yeah.
Again, when you come back to Montreal, there seems to be the heebie-jeebies about playing at the Bell Center. It's a question I'd love to ask him, but we'll get there. One thing I will say, watching him play, I think there's what Martin St. Louis made the comment of not being able to play the right way defensively.
Yeah.
Bolduc was one of the players he was talking about, and
yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm sorry, but you were brought in because of your shooting ability. You were brought in because of your snarl. You were brought in because you were a strong player in transition, a player that is being rotated in and off of the first power play wave. You got to show more. And I'm sorry, but if I'm Martin St. Louis, Demidov is on the first power play wave moving forward until he proves otherwise. I don't think the Canadiens are at a point anymore where they can have the luxury of trying to get a guy going. You could try it at 5-on-5, no problem, but on the power play time is earned. I am sorry.
All day.
And as much as I enjoy the player, he's a great human being. I very much like him. And I don't think he's the problem. But I think that if you want to set up a culture of meritocracy, if you want to set up a culture of always having to give the next a little bit more, then you have to be able to show more. Mm-hmm. And this isn't simply just a Bolduc thing. This is a team thing. So, I understand them going back to Montembeault in this game, because I thought Montembeault played very well. Yeah, I know.
What Freudian slip, we call that one.
Yes. I think Montembeault played very well against Vegas.
Yes.
But again, with Dobeš, I don't think Dobeš would have done any better in last night's game. I'm sorry. Like, we can make this this notion that it's a goaltending issue.
Yeah.
But when your heat map is a meteorite in the blue paint, buddy, it's your team.
Yeah.
Like, there are 2 ways to look about this, because I've spoken to a lot of former goaltenders. And when you are getting shelled the way the Canadiens are getting shelled in the high danger areas, you're going to get scored on more often than not, and your confidence is going to take a hit, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we've been spoiled in this market, because Carey Price just had these ungodly performances where we would just be left assuming that is what a number one goaltender looks like. No, that's what a Vezina goalie looks like. And unfortunately, you're not dealing with either in terms of these two goalies. So in the way that, you know, I see fans talking about goaltending, especially Dobish. Like, to me, Dobish, I love Dobish, but Dobish's impulsivity in net would drive a goaltending coach of any other team insane.
Yeah.
In terms of how far he jumps out to make pucks. Like, it's entertaining to watch, but from a technical perspective, it's a mess at times. And so this is why it's a tough situation to be in. And I think they're going to figure it out. Maybe it's maybe Marco Marciano needs to be called up from Laval, the goaltending coach there, that's done such good work with Dobesh, that could maybe work with these two guys, in tandem with Eric Raymond. Maybe that's potentially a solution. But the Canadiens have to play better in front of them.
Oh,
right?
without
You
question.
look at Linus Ullmark, right? Look at the other end, because we keep harping on the goaltender, but the Canadiens were never going to win that game last night, scoring 2 goals. So I don't understand why we keep harping on goalies when it's defensive structure and lack of offensive production that's killing the Canadiens right now, not just the goaltending. It's a top to bottom thing. Hoping that your goalie is going to bail you out is such a Marc Bergevin era state of mind. You need to get out of that state of mind. You need to outplay your team at 5-on-5 on a consistent basis. And I'm not saying that goaltending, like bad goaltending, has lost the Canadiens game. Of course it has. Absolutely. But it's also won the Canadiens games. Like, let's think back to that 6-2 win against Utah. Heck, even the last game against Utah.
Even the Vegas game. The Vegas game. Monty in the first period.
No, but the other way around, right? Even against Vegas wasn't, it wasn't a goaltending clinic the other side anyway. So ultimately speaking, the goaltending performances balance out. I think the Canadiens have gotten some below average goaltending in general. But to me, and again, I think I will say this time and time again, if you're scoring 2 goals or 3 goals for a game, you're not going to win.
No, and listen,
you're not going to win.
I think it's a lazy narrative to just say, hey, the goalies, Montembeault, Dobesh, they suck, and that's the reason why. That part I don't disagree with. But there's also the cliche is you're the last line of defense. Making a big stop to bail somebody out is part of your job. And it's psychologically
but how many times?
But
that's the problem. How many times?
In my notes last night, the Fabian Zetterlund goal, the 1-1 goal. This guy overcommits, as he always does, way to one side, leaves the blocker side open, it's 1-1. The Jake Sanderson goal, Noah Dobson gets walked. Where's Montembeault's pads? It's in the back of the frickin' net, not post to post. He isn't glued to his post. His pad is over the goal line to the net. The Drake Batherson goal that made it 4-1, the kill shot goal, in my opinion. The 4-1 goal. What are you doing there? Like, why aren't you stopping the puck? How is that not a face-off instead of it's a fat, juicy rebound? Batherson's there, it's 4-1.
Well, which it's again, a low shot in the pads.
I'm not putting it on Montembeault exclusively. He's partly responsible, but the crux of the matter is the defensive zone coverage is atrocious. To be harsh,
well,
it is so bad.
You want to talk about the Batherson goal? Like look at it. You have a point shot, a low point shot that hits the edge of the pad.
Yeah.
That is able to be scooped up and then put into the net. Between the shot from the high circle to the goalie's pads, there wasn't one Montreal Canadien in sight.
Right.
That's a problem.
It is.
Right? And again, it goes back to the meteorite-sized hole in the Canadiens' heat map defensively in the blue paint. And so this is why I go back to it when I say it's definitely a coverage issue. It's definitely a defensive coverage issue. And unfortunately, you can't play Matheson and Dobson 60 minutes. So you're going to have to figure this out. And ironically enough, the player out of the 4 that I thought played the best defensively following the top pair was Arbor Xhekaj. Ironically enough, he was the one that I didn't have a problem with when he was deployed. Meanwhile, I felt like Jaden Struble had potentially one of the worst defensive performances in the NHL this season, outside of Logan Mayhew's famous
I think it was the second worst in-game of the season, right?
In-game rating of the season
in-game
per
rating,
game cards. Yeah, that's everyone has their models, but and so it looks like there's going to be no changes on defense tonight.
No.
So with the schedule being the way it is, the lack of practices that the Canadiens are going to be having, because they're not going to have a morning skate, for example, on Saturday before the Leafs game. So they're going to have a practice on Friday, maybe, and then we'll see. It's very little time to work on these kinds of things. And I think that's kind of also the concerning part, is because of the Canadian schedule, and it's the schedule for basically everybody in the league. But with 16 games in 26 days, you're not going to have much time to practice. Most of the days off are actual days off. And so how is this going to improve like this? And this is the problem that a lot of young teams in the NHL are facing right now, is that with the lack of practice times, there's a lot of younger teams that are stalling. It's the teams that have strong veteran support that are the ones that are rising above this. So the more veteran teams are the ones keeping pace, which is why you see teams like Boston, Colorado, the more seasoned teams kind of keep pace. And the surprising teams, for example, the Anaheim Ducks, that bring in a Joel Quenneville who completely revamps the culture of that team. And then you throw a Trouba and a Kreider and a Granlund in the mix. Well, now the Ducks are a wagon in and of their own right. Well, That's what the Canadiens, that's unfortunately what the Canadiens are lacking, is that they have the core pieces. They're super young, but their roster is not filled out like the rest of these guys, nor do they have the structure to be able to compete. Yeah. So they're screwed on both ends. And the only way they're going to pull themselves out is through effort. And so that's what Martin St. Louis is trying to pull out of them, outside of Kent Hughes pulling off a trade.
And therein lies the issue, right? Like, there's so many people talking about, here, I'll put this up here, for example, the lack of bottom six identity. I mean, I feel like I have raised this point from the summer all the way up into right now. I'm not a pat myself on the back guy, but you knew it was going to be a problem. The Yoel Armia, the Christian Dvorak filling those roles. And I'm not saying the Montreal Canadiens should have re-signed Armia or Dvorak. This also comes down on a team, whether you want to admit it or not, but the Canadiens are still the youngest team in hockey, and they have to give these young guys these roles. They have to be able to see if these guys can grow into being the next versions of Armia and Dvorak, and you're going to struggle at times. You're going to struggle because you're watching these players do this. But for me, and remember, we did a video on this, I don't know, Marco, maybe it was a few weeks ago now at this point, but one of the subjects I wanted to tackle with you was, everyone talking about 2C, 2C, 2C. What about the identity defensively of this team? About not so much the David Savards, but having, the Caden Gooley's dearly missed, but having guys that are good defensemen. Mobility is great. Skill is obviously what you need, right? But I remember at the time talking about Dobson and Matheson. As you remember, I love contrast, and I still stand by that point. I don't feel they have enough of that contrast, those rugged shot blocking guys. You've got Arbor Jacki and Jaden Struble that on a good team, they're probably the seventh defenseman out there. So, is it systems? Is it personnel? Is it coaching? What's the read on the lapse of defensive zone coverage that had Martin St. Louis going into the locker room after 20 minutes saying, if you don't play defense, you don't commit to this, you're not going to play. And the ice time was drastically cut for a lot of guys yesterday.
Absolutely. And I think that, when you, first of all, off the bat, I think that the moment that Mike Matheson signed his contract, I think a lot of people instinctually went to the direction that, okay, Caden Gooley may be on the block now. I think games like last night, games against Colorado, show you just how much the Canadiens miss Caden Gooley, need Caden Gooley. And I think the Canadiens are very aware of that when it comes to their defensive structure. You hear Martin St. Louis talk about it, and it's almost like he's trying to tell us he doesn't have the best possible defense core right now that he could have to be able to execute that game plan. Caden Gooley, this is why he is so highly regarded across the league. Yes, he's prone to freak accidents. It happens. But, it goes to show you just how important he is to the success of this team. And What the Canadiens are trying to do is figure out what to do with their excess. Because when Caden Gooley is in the lineup, the four of them combined, the top four combined, Alex Carrier plays less. Jaden Struble is asked to weigh less of him. Arbor Jacki focuses on this 5-on-5 game. Everything kind of fits.
Yeah.
And I think eventually the Canadiens are going to have to make a move from their defense, but I don't think they want to do so until Caden Gooley is back or close to coming back. Because right now you're seeing what happens when you're overtaxing these younger guys that just don't have that differentiator ability to play in the top four. Like, yes, Jaden Struble looked nice playing next to Lane Hudson for a 10-game period last year.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing now that sample size is much larger, that he does not, and I like the dude, that he's a really fun person to talk to. I think he's got a future in this NHL, but I think it's very obvious to see that at this stage in his career, he has no business playing in a top four in the NHL, which is the reason why Alex Carrier, who I also believe has no business playing on a competitive team's top four in the NHL on a regular basis, is playing with Hudson, because they don't have anybody right now they feel they could step up to take that top four role. So the Canadiens are kind of in a rock and a hard place with the injuries. And I like the question that was asked because, even if it was just from a Gooley perspective or a bottom six perspective, I think the Canadiens overestimated how much depth they had.
Right.
Or the quality of the depth that they had,
Mm-hmm.
that they allowed other players to leave without replacing them. To me, if the goal was 100% to make the playoffs, I think a veteran, I don't know that you can go into a season every season with a young player as a seventh defenseman. I think you do need to have kind of that depth guy that you can kind of funnel into the lineup. But again, it's a difficult concept because the Canadiens pigeonhole themselves with waivers, right? You can't waive Jacki, and I don't think anybody wants to. You can't waive Struble. Adam Engstrom's knocking on the door. So contracts basically lock the Canadiens in. And then when there's injuries, you're happy you have that depth, but then you realize that depth isn't good enough to be able to lock in those kinds of roles.
What about the call-up option? Sammy Blais, to me, more or less a career AHLer. I don't think he's the answer. Alex Tessier, whatever. Capo Kakkonen, I mean, not yet, right? 25 games into the season. It's too... I don't know what message it would send, but I mean, is that even up for debate? When it comes to fixing what's going on, I just can't get over the defensive zone coverage. Like they need Carey Price in his prime essentially to get out from underneath what's going on in terms of how the Canadiens defend, especially in front of the net where they allow guys to walk in on the slot. Like the goalie tandem is going to stay in until God forbid it gets worse, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and listen, this is what I find hilarious. We're talking about veteran presences. We're talking about helping the Canadiens. We're talking about a guy that was submitted to waivers that no one picked up in Sammy Blais. He's going to come in and perform the role that Florian Jacki was called up to perform, which is being physical, dropping the gloves when necessary, and being a good veteran piece for players and doing so. I think, when you look at how these players are viewed across the league and what kinds of players the Canadiens need, like I still see comments in the chat about Caden Gooley this and, one speculating that his cut to the back of his leg is what contributed to his torn abductor. I could confirm that the two have absolutely nothing to do with each other, nothing. And I think this is where the silliness starts to get to me. Oh, it's like, guys, when it comes to Caden Gooley, every single time freak accident, his torn abductor was because he was playing through a groin injury. He didn't get that groin injury because he cut his leg 6 months ago. He got that groin injury because he overexerted his groin in practice before stretching it out and being warmed up. That's generally how it happens, especially in training camp. We move over to Jake Evans, who was playing injured last year. He's perfectly fine right now, but they're expecting more from him. Yes. You look at Josh Anderson, not playing injured at all right now, They're expecting more of him. You look at the defensive structure as well. Lane Hudson is everywhere on the ice. Doesn't matter who he plays with. He's everywhere on the ice, but he's not being covered properly when he's playing with whoever it is that's covering him. The only combination I've seemed to have liked so far, which goes against my previous prediction at the beginning of the year, was Hudson and Jack-Eye.
Yeah.
I actually don't mind that combination for the time being, but I don't know that you could put Jack-Eye out there. So the idea, the concept is the Canadiens have no choice but to get meaner on the blue line, to get tougher on the blue line. They can't have these puck-moving defensemen only. You're going to need some oomph. You're going to need some impact. And the same can be said about the bottom six. The Canadiens are too small, too frail on the bottom six at this moment. And that is also impactful when you look at the way that they play against teams like Ottawa. They don't have it anymore. And you said it before, the loss of Armia, the loss of Dvorak, those were guys that could take it to Ottawa.
Correct.
That had no problem feasting on Ottawa's bottom six. Well, you lose two guys like that and you don't have quality replacements. That's what happens.
So it's 7:30 tonight against Winnipeg. Jakub Dobeš. In terms of the lineup changes, Dobeš in for Montembeault and Jared Davidson going to be in for Fleury and Jack-Eye. Other than that, you're looking at more or less the same lineup you saw against Ottawa at the Bell Center on Andrei Markov tribute night. On the positive side of the ledger, I got to believe Nick Suzuki's keeping the mustache out of pure superstition. Everyone else has shaved their facial hair, including the coach behind the bench. Now that we're into December and November is over with. But Nick Suzuki's on a 6-game point streak. He's looking good. And you know what else in terms of silver linings? Cole Caulfield is keeping right up with him in terms of points, in terms of being a complete player. What are you seeing from Nick Suzuki? I mean, you want to talk about carrying the team. I mean, Nick Suzuki has just been on a tear lately.
I think that Nick Suzuki has found a little bit of health back, which is great. One of the things I really appreciated from him was the physicality. Since the Western road trip, he's been more physical, more implicated, getting nastier, harder to play against. Unfortunately, his plays aren't being completed. I don't think that Cole Caulfield had his best game last night either. But in terms of what he does, Nick Suzuki is and will always be this team's MVP until proven otherwise. And I just feel like all the heavy lifting that's asked of him, it's tough. It's really tough for him to be able to manage that because he's on the PK, he's on the power play, he's on 5-on-5, he's used against the toughest matchups. And sometimes being asked to double shift. So to me, Nick Suzuki, I have no problem with what he's done. I understood, the injury period that he was going through in end of October and mid-November. Unfortunately, I just don't think he's getting much help down the middle. And that's really where the Canadiens are losing a lot of their battles because I feel like Nick Suzuki is always well-positioned and well-covered. But again, on that Arton Zub goal, I just did not feel like he was getting the proper support from his wingers in that defensive structure, and he gets a -1 on that play. But to me, he has the vision. He is the focal point. And what's interesting as we keep going, when we were talking to Nick Suzuki in the room, he's getting more and more, I'd say, hungry. You could see it in his face where he's just trying to level up and put the team on his back and try to get up there. I know that this is an unfortunate period in time, but I think Canadiens fans are going to appreciate Nick Suzuki even more once they reach that next level of contendership, because this is a guy that's not going to tolerate these kinds of performances when the Canadiens are a deeper team.
No, he's a Shea Weber disciple. I mean, every time I see him, when I hear him talk, I love his leadership. I'm a huge Suzuki fan. He's on pace for 98 points. Cole Caulfield on pace for 92. Leaders, primetime players stepping up when they need to. From Joey Gauthier, we spoke about goaltending a few times in the 34 minutes we've been on, and it was funny. TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger talked on this subject, Joey and others, wondering about would the Canadiens consider a trade for a goaltender right now? Because I think it was last week and maybe even this past weekend, there's some speculation. Canadiens, Jordan Binnington, Canadiens, St. Louis. Who are the Canadiens looking at? Are they going to deal with the Blues again and tying and maybe trying to make that connection? Dreger said when he caught wind of that, he checked in and like there's zero. He checked in with a couple of sources with Montreal and no truth to that whatsoever, according to TSN Hockey Insider Darren Dreger on the speculation around Jordan Binnington. The answer to me, I don't even think a trade at this point. I mean, if you're speculating on a trade, the Canadiens are dealing from such a tremendous weak point in terms of trying to get better. Who isn't? Everybody's looking for a 2C. Canadiens are obviously in that lineup of teams looking for that 2C. I know I don't even think it's a cop-out answer, to be truthful. The solution comes from that dressing room, the guys that are in there. Brendan Gallagher got to stop freaking complaining to the referees while a game is being played, man. This isn't like adult pickup league at Cat Glass,
I think unfortunately Brendan Gallagher is at his, at the maximum that he can give in terms of his physical performance. I don't think you're going to get more out of Brendan Gallagher at this point. I think he's been very serviceable to the Montreal Canadiens organization, but he is what he is at this point. So I don't necessarily think that that's going to help them. I think that when you look at what you need moving forward, yes, 2C. I think I agree with that. I think they definitely need to bolster their bottom six. I think they have one of the most expensive bottom sixes in the league, and it's probably under the median in terms of their ability, their output. I'm not a very big fan of it. I think the loss of Alex Newhook has basically neutered the Canadiens' bottom six. It's incredible to see the quality depth that he brought. The Canadiens need more of that. Obviously, different types and different styles, but they definitely need more of that, which is the reason why the Montreal Canadiens have shown interest in Kiefer Sherwood. That's the kind of player that I think that they would like to add. Obviously, not at any price, and I don't know that they're in the business of rentals at this stage, but that's the kind of player that they are looking to identify that they need to add to their lineup. So you can definitely expect them to try and change things around and try to improve the same way they did last December with the Carrier trade. They're definitely trying, but the market, she be very, very dry, very dry, like bone dry.
Yeah.
And there's maybe 4 identifiable sellers. The only way that you're going to convince any other team to make a move is if you overpay through the nose. And I guarantee everybody on this broadcast that if they do that, you'll be happy for 5 minutes and you'll complain about it for the next decade. So I don't think Kent Hughes is in that business. I think that he's going to wait it out. He's going to let his team try to figure it out. And at the same time, he's going to work the phones. But I just don't know that a goaltending trade is necessarily the way to go.
No,
because I don't think that Jacob Fowler is that far if you leave him alone. I don't think he's that far. I think one really good season in the AHL this year. I think, up and down next year. And then I think you have your number one. Do you, at that point, spend assets to go and get a goalie? Like, I know that there was talk from Elliot Friedman about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Yeah.
But he signed for another 4 years. You'd basically be pigeonholing, right? And I just don't know that he's the solution, but it also depends on the price, right? Like if you're able to unload Samuel Montembeault and you go and get him, then you have to make a decision on Dalbesh, of course. But like I can understand the idea, the logic. It's just it seems like an unnecessary move to help you in the short term that may become problematic in the long term. I don't see the Canadiens going that route.
No, I don't. I wish I could push back on it. I wish I could push back on why I think calling up Fowler would be the right thing to do. I strongly disagree with that, to be honest with you. I think, to your point, seeing how he played against the 16-3 Providence Bruins, guys run over, no call on Jacob Fowler, stands tall, 4-1 win. Despite the fact that Pascal Vincent's team out there in Laval was without Florian, was without Jared Davidson, was without Adam Engstrom, and they still put up a very, very strong collaborative effort, beating a 16-3 Providence team, backstopped by Jacob Fowler there. This guy's got a 215 goals against, a 920 save percentage. He's putting up good numbers. It's all about consistency and getting those reps in. Let's talk about return to form. Nice to see the news drop the other day that Kirby Dach had a 15-minute skating session. I was at a pasta shop the other day picking up my order for the week, and buddy behind the counter, he goes, Patrick Laine, huh? I'm like, you know what, Patrick Laine, man? I forgot about this guy. I haven't heard a peep around Patrick Laine, but nice to see Kirby Dach there, and obviously Caden Gooley's still forever away. Alex Newhook's forever away, but positive first step. I mean, we talk almost exclusively about the absence of Caden Gooley. How much is the balance affected by Kirby Dach's absence?
I think they're missing an entire middle six line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Laine, Newhook, and Kirby Dach. That's going to hurt you. That's definitely going to hurt you. And I think when you look at Kirby Dach, I think where you miss a guy like Kirby Dach is down the middle playing in these matchups. I felt like the way that Kirby Dach was playing right before his injury, he would have been extremely useful in the way that he played against the Ottawa Senators in the past. He would have been useful in a game like last night. His speed, his reach, the physicality that he was showing. I think that it's almost crazy to say, but I think the Canadiens miss that what he brings, that impact. And I think that it's really good to see him being able to kind of get back on his skates. He's still in a walking boot this morning, so it's not imminent, but I think you see him around, I think we see him around Christmas is what I've been told. So I think that it's a good thing to have him come back. One of the things I would mention, I do see like a trade Dach and Laine in the comments. I feel like, a lot of the people that comment that wouldn't do well when it comes to like stock trading and whatnot, selling low all the time. The Canadiens aren't going to trade guys that are injured. It's actually fround upon.
Well, that's why I don't. Yeah, that's why I don't bring it up.
And
Like,
trading them
point?
now is just irrelevant. So I just want to bring that up. The other thing is, I would not hope that the Canadiens sign George Laraque. I see that in the comments as well. I hope that George comes back into the fold and continues to coach the Jack-Eye brothers on
How do you even
techniques.
address this? What's the point of addressing something like this? Like,
because I wanted to shout out my boy.
For Christ's sake. Like, what are we talking about?
To shout out my boy. I wanted to shout out my boy.
Yikes. That's a choice.
But to bring it back, to bring it back to Dach, I think Dach's efficacy at 5-on-5 would have made him a very interesting piece in this situation to play against a team like the Ottawa Senators. I think outside of his face-off efficiency, which isn't necessarily very good, I think that he still helps to control the pace of the game and is really strong in transition, really good up the middle. And I think that's where they would have missed a guy like him last night. So when he does come back, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go up the middle. And I think at that point, you could push Kapanen back down a peg to third line and Evans back down to fourth line, and Veleno to the wing to take the left shot faceoffs. But I think it allows you a little bit more flexibility, right? Maybe you move Baldzuk down. Maybe Demidov goes up to the first line. Maybe you put Slafkovsky back with Demidov and you run Baldzuk, Dach, and Demidov. But it gives you more options to run an effective top six. As much as I have liked Oliver Kapanen's defensive game, I just feel like he does not follow offensively enough to be able to fill that role on a consistent basis. So getting a Dach back would be a huge help in that regard.
Let me put this up because I'd love to know the answer to this question from Richard. The problem is the coach doesn't know how to build a fourth line. He doesn't.
This isn't soccer. Coaches don't build fourth lines. GMs do.
So Jared Davidson, Joe Veleno, and Brendan Gallagher. What's the answer to the fourth line beyond those three guys? Like, you want to put Demidov on the fourth line? Do you want Florian Jack-Eye and Jared Davidson out there? Do you want George Laraque on the fourth line? Like, I don't get, like, like what's the buildup, Marco, of a fourth line other than fourth line players like Jared Davidson, Joe Veleno, and Brendan Gallagher?
I think when you watch the way that they play, the Canadiens don't have an identifiable fourth line that you can use that will help you win on a consistent basis. Not the way that Jake Evans and Josh Anderson have played, unfortunately.
Yeah.
They've shown the ability to do so when Jake Evans played with speed and Josh Anderson played with physicality and pace, but we're not seeing that right now.
Man? What happened to this
Brendan
guy?
Gallagher, 1 goal after scoring 20 last year. The drop off from those 3 players has been killer at a point where, as we mentioned before, they lost basically a middle 6 line in Doc, Newhook, and Laine. So to lose all of that in one shot and not get the quality from your depth players and not have enough quality in Laval to be able to come in and take the opportunity away from these veterans is a recipe for lose. It's a lose-lose.
The Winnipeg Jets tonight, they've lost 4 of 5.
I did want to address a comment, though. Just came in now, MST 5321. Strongly disagree. Can't blame defenders only when it's a man-to-man system. I literally pointed out that Cole Caulfield and Zachary Bolduc played that system horribly last night on the Artem Zub goal. That was the winger's responsibility to grab the defenseman. They do not. So it's absolutely nothing. It's absolutely not a defenseman only situation. It is a complete team zone system situation where their man-to-man coverage gets discombobulated the moment that the opposition starts moving in a circular motion, and they try to play a hybrid moment of zone and man-to-man defense. And so I 100% agree that it's on the forwards, and this is the reason why Zachary Bolduc had his minutes slashed yesterday after that moment, and the reason why Cole Caulfield was none too happy to have a conversation with us about it last night.
Yeah, and he was fantastic post-game. So was Nick Suzuki, talking about the form, talking about the commitment, just not there. Cole Caulfield especially, I thought was, very pointed in his comments about he's sick and tired of people not doing their jobs, is what he said. Didn't single anybody out. It's a good team, good teammates. They're not calling anybody out. But Cole Caulfield specifically mentioned how frustrated he is, not pushing guys to the outside, allowing, to our earlier point from the beginning of today's show, the ease of access in which the opposition regularly has to get to the front of the net to skate through the slot is so frustrating, so fatiguing, so demoralizing on a regular basis, chasing the game, getting hemmed in time and time again, and you deal with all the injuries and everything else. Here we are going into Winnipeg. It was funny. I was talking with the folks at Winnipeg Sports Talk on their YouTube channel, and I was like, "Oh, you know what? It's a gate right," because they're nervous about tonight too. Obviously, no Connor Hellebuck. They're struggling, and they've lost 4 of 5. And I was like, "Don't worry, it's a get right game for you guys." He goes, "It's funny you say that because we're thinking the same thing." So it's not just the Montreal market that's down in the dumps, paranoid, insecure about the state of their NHL team. The Winnipeg Jets fearful that tonight for the Canadiens will be a get-right game. So what do you look at? Like, what's the correction? What are you expecting to see from this team after 12 goals get scored on them in the last 2 games?
Intensity. I would be you combine the shock from last night's game and the conversations, and I say conversations lightly, that were had between Martin St. Louis and the team, and you couple that with the honoring of Andrei Markov tonight.
Oh boy.
And if they come out flat, wave the red flag. I fully expect them to come out guns a-blazing.
Raise the red flag on what, this season?
On the team, yes, absolutely. If you can't get up...
Oh, they had a 1% chance of making the playoffs last year.
I don't care. If you can't get up after a loss like that, after a loss like the Colorado Avalanche, the night that you honor one of the greater players to play in this century for the Montreal Canadiens, and who has that impact, and it should be good. Like if PK is involved in the ceremony, which I'm sure he will be, like the crowd is going to be on. They're going to be able to feed off of that. And if they can't stand up and play with the intensity needed and the discipline needed to beat an ailing Winnipeg Jets team, at that point I would start being a little worried about where things are going, because I think at that point you may have a cultural issue. And, I see a lot of people saying like they need to play Demidov more and Hudson needs more minutes and needs to be put in better situations. The problem is that these guys are elite talent players, but they haven't reached their peak. They haven't even scratched the surface on what they can do on a regular basis. Eventually they're going to get there, and when they do, the Canadiens will be a far better team. But I think there was this idea that these guys would be like saviors of this team because they played with such emotion to end the season. I don't think you're going to see that over 82 games. And I think that ultimately, when you see a guy on the ice like Markov, who took a lot of time before he became elite, I think it's a reminder as well to fans that this doesn't happen over time. I think it's fair to say the Canadiens overachieved last year, which is normal. And there's a little bit of a back down to reality situation now that the Eastern Conference is far more competitive, and we have to be in that reality. But it's how the Canadiens play that bothers people. And that's where I say red flag, because getting beat out by talent is one thing. Getting beat out because of a lack of effort or concentration or discipline, that's cultural. And that's where I believe things may come to a head, where the Canadiens may be forced to make a move between now and the December trade freeze on December 20th.
There's been some reaction to, the Demidov ice time and everything else, the opinions out there that, he should
played
jump on
17 minutes.
Well, exactly. Over 15 at 5 on 5.
And Slafkovsky played 22 minutes last night.
And I listen, I like Slafkovsky's game quite a bit. I think, we did a good job this week talking about how he's playing, how he's developing. And I get the frustration. I think a lot of emotional people, they're watching number one picks like Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini absolutely torch the opposition night after night after night. And here we are putting a first overall pick on pace for 45 points. I get it. But on the other side, like, to me, I would rather keep Bolduc on the top line than move Demidov there, because Caulfield and Suzuki could do it. I think Slav needs Demidov on his second line as opposed to replacing him with Bolduc, for example. Gallagher's not going up, Anderson's not going up. No one's saying that, but I wouldn't make that choice now because they don't have another option. I still think this team needs to have two lines with a good chance at scoring. And I think if you take Demidov off the second line, you don't have a second line that I think can score anymore.
No, neither do I. And I think that Martin St. Louis was very aware of that last night. And that's why, he changed his rotation. I don't know if fans caught on to this, but he definitely changed his rotation in terms of how he went about utilizing his lines. Like the Demidov-Slafkovsky line was very much his second line last night because he had the last change.
Yeah.
And I've enjoyed what I've seen from Slafkovsky. I think that he's in his element on the left wing. No, I do not think that he's a center. I think that's a desperate play to fill an organizational void that belongs to the general manager, not the player. Jonathan Drouin vibes all over again.
No kidding. This market loves doing that. I love it.
Loves putting wingers at center. Yeah. And just the way that I see it with Slafkovsky, he is playing like the perfect two-way winger, power forward type. You saw the way that Brady Tkachuk impacted the game for Ottawa on one end.
Yes.
I felt like Slafkovsky matched him on the other end, but he wasn't playing with a Stützle, right? Like he wasn't playing in a situation where his defensemen were active and coming in to help him. And I still felt like, if you looked at the on-ice go-to-go, I still believed that Slafkovsky managed to keep pace with a guy like Brady Tkachuk last night in terms of overall impact on the ice. Because I don't think that Tkachuk was necessarily a very strong defensive player. I don't think that Slafkovsky has the meanness of Brady Tkachuk, but they definitely have the same skill set in terms of being able to protect the puck, playmaking ability, ability off the boards, be able to work in transition with protection. I think people miss the point between calling Slafkovsky a mean power forward. I don't think you guys get the context of this, but a power forward in the sense of being able to transition puck, protect pucks, use the physicality to make space for their opponents. There's a difference between a guy who roughs it up and is in your face and is a shit disturber. Yes, that is very unique to Brady.
But we knew that too. As soon as he said it at the Four Nations, we knew it made no sense when he said, "Oh, I want to be like Brady Tkachuk." I mean, Slav, come on, not everybody's like. I remember saying, like, you're born with that personality. I don't think you can learn how to be Brady Tkachuk without being born like Brady Tkachuk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's the thing is the difference between Brady Tkachuk and Juraj Slafkovsky, I believe, is personality-wise. That's basically it. Other than that, I think that they have very similar skill sets, and I like the way that Slafkovsky has evolved this season because I think you're seeing more and more of that ability. The one element of their skill set where I feel like Brady Tkachuk though is just a level above is the shot. Tkachuk's release is so quick, and I feel like that's the only thing that really differentiates the two when I look at them on the ice last night is just the quality of the release. If Slafkovsky, like we've talked about, either shaves his stick down 6 inches or can improve the release of his shot by maybe half a second, then at that point, man, you know what? I should stop doing player comparables because it feels like even the hairline on Brady Tkachuk versus Slafkovsky may be compared at this point just to differentiate.
Did you want the Canadiens to take Brady over Jesperi? If we go back to that draft here?
I would know. I was it was either for me, it was Philip Zadina or Quinn Hughes.
Remember how many goals Zadina was scoring? Oh my gosh. Yes. I was big on Zadina as well. And who was the other one?
Quinn Hughes.
Oh.
I really liked Quinn Hughes. I had a lot of friends that were in on the Hughes brothers at the time. And ever since Pacioretty played for Michigan, I always kind of had my eye on Michigan as a program to being able to bring in guys that I really enjoyed. And Quinn Hughes in his draft year was just flying all over the place. So I thought that given the Canadiens' lack of left D at the time, I thought that he was a surefire, top pair kind of guy. So I always really kind of enjoyed him. And Zadina, I guess you got into the trap of the late born, but I also am a huge Halifax Mooseheads fan. So I thought that, with Nico Hischier the year before performing so well, and then having him kind of come in with similar numbers, I thought, well, what are the chances? Well, the chances were that he wasn't going to stick in the NHL at all. So it was what it was.
Man, Brady would be an absolute freaking rock star in this market. If you could go back and let's say they choose Brady over Jesperi in that draft year, and he continues along the path that he's on currently as the leader, the captain. That was a beautiful play along the half wall there when Jaden Struble had him tied up and he finds Zub there. I mean, that was such a great play. Scores his first goal of the year too. Of course, it's in Montreal. Fans are booing. He's guy's in his element. It's just in an alternate universe would have been interesting to see. I mean, obviously if they have Quinn Hughes, they don't draft Lane Hudson, I suppose, right down the road if they have that guy.
Yeah, it's the same people it's the same mindset of, the Canadiens should go after Cole Hudson. I don't think the Canadiens want two of the same kind of player in their lineup if they plan on being a team that's going to be effective in the NHL. But again, when it comes to Slafkovsky, like to me, he's still in that category of players. I spoke to an NHL executive the other week about Slafkovsky as he was getting his momentum going. And it's incredible how much the NHL differs from the comment section of a podcast sometimes, because if Slafkovsky were ever to become available, the Canadiens' phone would be off the hook.
Oh my gosh.
Especially with the contract that he signed. So, it doesn't look like much because obviously there's a lot of negatives right now. But when you look at BPA and you look at players and you look at positioning and whatnot, there's BPA and you could always make trades. But what happens when the trade market is dry as hell? you could be dangling, Michael Hage, 2 first-round picks right now for the best center available, and that best center would probably be Ryan O'Reilly because the market is that thin at this moment. So you can draft and trade later, but what if that market never comes and you're forced to make a panic trade? So there's an oversimplification of a general manager's job that I feel that it comes into it. You take the best type of player or you pick the rarest kind of player. I get that logic as well, because sometimes, maybe the right winger is the better player by a hair, but the center is harder to get.
Yeah.
So maybe you pick the center, or maybe you pick the left winger power forward because the left winger power forward is very hard to get compared to a middle six center, right? So it's always that goes into drafts. And I still stand by it. Slafkovsky was not my first overall pick on my list in 2022, but I definitely understand the logic and going to get him. And if he continues to improve, I don't think the Canadiens will necessarily be looking back like the Canadiens were with Jesperi Kotkaniemi and saying, maybe we should have picked somebody else.
Final thoughts here. When I covered the Montreal Expos for a while, especially in the lean years before they left for Washington, and we would always get the bobblehead dolls. I got Orlando Cabrera Russian dolls. I got Frank Robinson, bunch of Expo bobblehead dolls. The Canadians don't give the media Lane Hudson bobbleheads. Did they last night?
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Well, that's a cop-out. That's no fun.
No comment? What would you prefer? I know that some members of the media, I'm sure some members of the media got bobbleheads.
Did you get a bobblehead?
I did not.
Okay. So where's this? Just answer the question. Where's confirm or deny? I mean, if you got
I can't speak for everybody else. I didn't want to throw anybody under the bus.
Andrei Markov tonight. He spent his entire career with the Canadiens. To me, as I mentioned in the past, he's the best Canadiens defenseman of my generation. I don't come from the old school Guy Lapointe, Serge Savard, Larry Robinson, Big Three era from the 70s. Second most points from a defenseman in the history of the Montreal Canadiens organization. You're going to be in the building for what should be a very special night tonight, I imagine.
Absolutely, and we get to talk to him right before the game as well. We actually had an interview with him at RG Media where he told a really funny story. We all remember when Andrei Markov had the 2 seasons where he injured his knee, right?
Yeah.
Well, he came
Carey
back.
Price skate, Matt Cook. Well, those were his ankles and the severed stuff. Remember, he collided with Carey Price's skate. Oh,
yeah, I know, but I'm talking about like the knee injuries, right?
Yeah.
And at one point he was rehabbing his knee and he wanted a place to train. And we all know that between Saint Jean and Canada Day, basically everything is closed in terms of gyms and whatnot. Back then, because back then it wasn't so many chains as it was now. It was more like individual gyms.
Yeah.
And so they were all closed and Markov needed a place to train. And he was arguing with the Canadiens training staff, like, hey, open up the ice for me or open up the gym. And they were like, no, everything's closed. And Bob Gainey walks by and he says, you need a place to train? Come to my place. And he made him drive from Montreal to Peterborough.
Oh my God.
And they spent the weekend. They spent the weekend together as he trained. And then they would have like nice barbecue by the water. He has a nice cottage by a lake. And they talked about family and they talked about teams. And he's like, I'm having supper with Bob freaking Gainey. Like this is my boss here. And we're just like shooting the shit. And I'm just like, man, he's like Bob Gainey again, just showing his great class, but he has such nice things to say about Bob Gainey. And he had such nice things to say about, the way that the Canadiens fans always treat him and how awesome it was to play in Montreal. And, so I expect a lot of emotion from a guy who didn't show much emotion in general.
Yeah.
I know that PK is in town, so maybe we're going to see a little bit of nostalgia in that regard as well. And, maybe we see something on the ice. Maybe I'm teasing, maybe I'm not.
We'll see. Brendan Gallagher played with him. I would imagine he might be, if they're going to do something, he might be involved there too.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And then, I just feel like when you look at Andrei Markov, I think that you look at the stability of the Montreal Canadiens defense in the salary cap era, I would say. Like he was the guy, or he is the guy that Lane Hudson to me has to outperform to be considered the best Canadiens defenseman in the 2000s to now, like this century. Because Andrei Markov was just consistently excellent, just thought the game so well, made what should have been a bottom 5 power play or respectable power play. And never squeezed the Canadiens either when it came to contract negotiations, which is really, kind of sad to see the way that he went out 10 games before his 10 games before.
Brutal.
I just really didn't like that.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to his legacy, I don't think you'll ever see his jersey retired.
No.
But I really think that he is probably the most underrated Canadiens defenseman in the history of the team. My two cents.
To me, a legend. Very much looking forward to this. And I like this from Paulie. He got the opportunity to play with Bob Gainey years ago. Class act. I would echo that sentiment. I've had the great pleasure of meeting Bob Gainey and playing golf with Bob Gainey a couple of different times. We were members of the same club for a small period of time. And it should be a good one tonight. Very much looking forward to this. So Habs and Jets at 7:30 tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at noontime. Hopefully a bounce back game. See this team can tighten up. I mean, they got read the riot act more or less from their captain, from their coach.
Oh my God. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Guys, I could just for the fans, the vibe in the dressing room after the game.
Yeah. Oh, I can imagine.
You know when you walked into your siblings' room after your parents had just finished giving them a mountain of shit?
Yeah.
That's the vibe.
And Marty's not a big go in the room guy, but he was in there after 20 minutes. And I mean, and you know how short his answers were. Normally this guy likes to wax poetic after games. I mean, this guy was like one word. Like he wanted to be done with that hockey game, man. So let's see, do something about it then. Do something about it today against Winnipeg, a team that's vulnerable without Connor Hellebuck, struggling for consistency. They lost 4 of 5. So let's see. Looking forward to recapping this game with you tomorrow. Marco, as always, thank you and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday and enjoy Andrei Markov night at the Bell Center.
I invite all the fans to enjoy tonight. Andrei Markov ceremony, I believe, starts at 7, and then the game itself starts at 7:30. Yeah. So make sure not to miss that and tune in just a smidge early.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, man. See you later.
Have a good one, everybody.